Today I'm going to talk about, should you get in sales? Maybe you're on the fence, maybe you're thinking about it, maybe you got some people that are telling you to try it out. Welcome to Car Talk, where I give you my 20 years of experience.
This one's for the ones who keep going.
Now I'm going to be a little bit biased because I've been doing it for 20 plus years, and I think it's an absolute amazing career for anybody to get into from a number of different standpoints. Usually in sales, the first thing that always comes up is the income. The income is what gets people to even consider it or give it a try most of the time, because that's usually what's talked about. I know when I first came, it was flexible hours, top pay, tons of benefits, and that's true. That's true, right? You can make pretty decent money in sales for sure. But what really doesn't get talked about a lot of the time is how you do that, how you actually make good money. And are the hours really that flexible? They are. You have to be flexible. You don't get flexible hours. You have to be flexible. So the first thing I would say if you're going to get into sales is you got to be a little bit confident. You have to be a little bit confident. I think this is something that you could build on, something that you'll keep learning through your career if you chose sales. But I think you got to be a little bit confident, because we get told no and we get rejected more than we win. And for most people, they can't take rejection. They can't take no over and over and over again. They want to crumble and just give up because they get frustrated. You have a customer that comes into the dealership or whatever product you're selling, and the customer's withholding information that would make the whole transaction easier. Now I understand why they do that. They're doing that because that's what they've been taught. They don't want to give you all their cards. They want to make sure that they try to get the best deal possible, which is totally agreeable. I totally understand. But as a salesperson with a little bit low confidence, you come in, you're gonna wonder why the customer doesn't walk through the front door and say, "Hey, I want this blue F-150. I seen it over here. If you can sell it to me for this, I'll buy it." That most people that come in don't understand why the customer doesn't do that. So you got to be a little bit confident. You got to be willing to fear the rejection. Be okay with it. Be okay with getting told no. Being okay with pushing forward. The second thing I think you got to be is you got to be persistent. You got to be persistent, because most people are going to tell you, "No, I'm okay. No, I'm good. Hey, I'll follow up with you when I'm ready." So you got to be persistent enough, but also skilled enough that you're not just bugging them. You're not just going to call somebody back. "Hey, are you ready to buy? Hey, are you ready to buy? Hey, I'm just calling back to see if you're ready to buy." You got to be a little bit mindful. You got to be skillful with that. You got to bring the customer value, but you got to be willing to be persistent, even when the client tells you, "Hey, we'll get back to you." But if you have some value that you can provide them, you have to reach out to them and share that. You got to be a little bit punctual. You got to be willing to show up on time. Okay? This is another one that I find that for salespeople have a hard time. Is they don't really have they don't really, it's a word I'll be looking for. They don't really show up ready to work. Right? They don't really show up and have a plan and ready to attack the day. So you got to be a little bit punctual, but you also got to be self-accountable. You got to be self-accountable, because most of the day you're going to be on your own. In the dealership, you do have a manager. They're looking after you. They're helping you. They're pushing. They're guiding you. But depending on the size of the store, they might have 10 to 12 people that they're helping out. So for the majority of the day, you got to be self-accountable. This is another one that I find that's difficult for most people. Is self-accountability. You got to find motivation within yourself to get up, go talk to another client, get rejected, customer tells you no, answer the phone, customer's rude on the phone rings again, you pick up the phone again, now you're talking with the customer, they're being difficult. There's just, you got to be willing to keep pushing forward. So your motivation and your self-accountability is going to be something that you're going to have to learn if you don't already have that. All these things, they're teachable, except for the motivation part. Like, it's very hard to motivate somebody long term. Short term, yeah, a little bit of money here, a little bit of contest here or there, but long term motivation really comes from you. So you're gonna have to be self accountable, get yourself motivated. One of the other things is you gotta be willing to work. You gotta be willing to put the time in. Okay? Most people show up trying out sales and they're clock watchers. Right? Clocking in right at 8:30, that's what time they start. Clocking out at 4 o'clock, right when it's time to leave. When it's 30 minutes before they leave, they're not really trying to get another customer. They're not really trying to get roped into another customer, because they know that if they did, there's a chance that they could stay a little bit later. Now, I'm not saying that you have to always be willing to stay late, show up early. Not. You don't have to do it all the time, but you just have to be willing to do it when necessary. Like if you're off at 4 o'clock and that phone rings at 3:30, are you really not motivated enough to try to make a little bit more money for yourself and for your family, just because it might take you over to an hour past your time when you're supposed to leave? So that's another one I think is that you got to be willing to do. You got to be willing to work a little extra. I prided myself in my career. I prided myself in being willing to outwork everybody, because what I realized was I didn't have the natural skill like I seen other people. Some people just had the gift of gab, and they just were naturally, just good at it. For some reason, they were just naturally good at sales, and that just wasn't me. I wasn't naturally good at it. I had to work my tail off to do it. I had to put in the extra hours. I had to put in the extra training. So if you come in, you're natural. Hey, maybe you don't gotta work. Maybe you don't gotta work extra. I don't know. But I just see it all the time that if you're willing to put in a little extra time, it's gonna go a long way. You also gotta be willing to invest in yourself. All right? If you want to make decent money, don't be afraid to get your debit card out and pay for some training. Find somebody that trains on your career in sales and pay for it. Listen to it. This one really bugs me. I don't understand. With as much information out there, with much people who train and help when it comes to sales, most salespeople don't pay for it, don't actually train. Instead, it's the opposite. They make fun of the trainers. I don't understand it. So you got to be willing to invest in yourself and train. All professionals train. You got to be willing to do that. Now, there's tons of trainers out there, that are good. There's some trainers out there that maybe they're not so good. Maybe they don't fit your style. But don't just listen to one or two trainers and then blanket statement all the trainers that are training and just tell you that they're terrible. Okay? Because what you're really trying to do when you listen to the training anyway is you're trying to pick one or two things out from what you listen and put it in your tool bag. Okay? You don't need to be verbatim what they're training and be their way they talk and have their attitude and dress like them and all that. You just gotta be willing to pick up on some of the stuff they're talking about. The other thing is, you gotta be willing to say, okay, if I'm gonna start sales, I'm gonna give it a minimum, a minimum of 6 months. A minimum of 6 months before I give up. Because the first month you come in, you're gonna get shocked. You're gonna get shocked. It's not gonna go smooth. Maybe it will. Maybe for you it might go really smooth. That's awesome. I've seen it happen. But for the majority of people who aren't naturally talented, gift to gab, they're changing careers and they're getting into this. Most people get really shocked on the first month how difficult it is. And they start second guessing themselves. So that's why you gotta give it a minimum of 6 months, okay? Give it a minimum of 6 months. In that 6 months, you actually have to try it. So you have to do the things that we were just talking about. You gotta be self-accountable. You gotta have the motivation, okay? You gotta invest in yourself. You gotta do the daily training. Really get to know the product that you're selling inside and out. Know the competitor's product that you're selling. Know the foundations of sales. Know why you have to do something, why you're doing it, how to do it properly. And really invest in the 6 months of yourself. Okay? If you take a job in sales, let the family know, hey, this might be a rough 6 months, but no matter what, I'm giving it 6 months before I give up. Because month 1, month 2, month 3, it's too short of a time to change. You might have to change everything. You might have to change, the way you conversate with the customer. There's going to be a lot you're going to have to change. We can go in details in a different video on that, but there's going to be a lot you're going to have to change in usually a month or 2 months. Just doesn't happen. Now, the manager, on the other hand, he might realize in a month or 2 months whether or not you're going to make it or not. But unless the manager says something, okay?
This one's for the ones who keep going, even when life's got them on the ropes. Hustle over talent.